continuation video on our discussion on carbohydrate metabolism. Okay? So here in this video, ang focus natin is your photosynthesis. So class, I think you are well familiar with this pathway since high school, diba? But here we are going to discuss it in detail. So as an introduction, let's watch this short animation on photosynthesis. Ayan, so as you have seen in the video, class, ang ating reactant on your photosynthesis or our initial substrates are your carbon dioxide and your water. So here it is, class. And secondly, products are ano naman po? Again, our byproduct is oxygen and main product is sugar, so usually glucose. Okay? So here again is our topics on our discussion here. So first, we will briefly discuss your photosynthetic pathway and then its phases, and lastly, the side reactions that can occur under this pathway, or we also call it your photorespiration. Class, recall, in our phases of photosynthesis, similar with your glycolytic and your pentose phosphate pathways, we have two phases. So I hope you are still familiar or you still remember these two phases, diba? We call it your light dependent and light independent. So here, the phases are based on the light energy or their capability to do reactions with or without light. So class, to comprehensively discuss the photosynthesis, we have again another video here. So let's watch this video shortly.
The leaves of this plant have cells that carry out photosynthesis. During photosynthesis, plants capture the energy from sunlight and use it, along with water and carbon dioxide, to produce carbohydrates, or sugars. Oxygen is also released as a byproduct. These photosynthetic reactions are typically written as a chemical formula. Solar energy plus 6 carbon dioxide molecules plus 6 water molecules react to produce 1 glucose molecule and 6 molecules of oxygen. To better understand the reactions of photosynthesis, let's take a closer look at the leaves of this plant. If we zoom in on one photosynthetic plant cell, we can see the chloroplast, where the reactions of photosynthesis occur.
Class, I would like to emphasize here again, ang sites or main sites of your photosynthetic reactions, both the light dependent and light independent, occurs inside your chloroplast. Okay, so I hope that's clear.
Let's zoom into this chloroplast to get a closer look. Photosynthesis consists of two primary steps, the light reactions and the Calvin cycle reactions. Both steps occur within the chloroplast. The light reactions occur within the thylakoid of the chloroplast. Here, special pigments absorb light energy and transfer it to high-energy electrons, which ultimately produce ATP and the electron carrier NADPH. Water is also split to replace the high-energy electrons. In the process, oxygen gas is released. The Calvin cycle reactions, commonly called the dark reactions or the light-independent reactions, occur within the stroma of the chloroplast. Here, a series of reactions use the ATP and NADPH produced by the light reactions to turn carbon dioxide into carbohydrates. The NADP plus and ATP that were also produced by the Calvin cycle reactions are then recycled to be used by the next set of light reactions. Now that you understand a little about light reactions and Calvin cycle reactions, let's zoom back out and do a quick review. During photosynthesis, plants capture the energy from sunlight and use it, along with water and carbon dioxide, to produce carbohydrates, or sugars. Oxygen is also released as a byproduct. These photosynthetic reactions are typically written as a chemical formula. Solar energy plus 6 carbon dioxide molecules plus 6 water molecules react to produce 1 glucose molecule and 6 molecules of oxygen.
O, diba? Piece of cake, class, ang photosynthesis. So, sir, totoo, ang dali ng photosynthesis. Okay, so I know that it's relatively easy, diba? So, let's discuss the overview of your photosynthesis from this video. So, class, check this diagram. So, again, ang important here are the reactants or our initial substrates, namely carbon dioxide, which is absorbed from air, and your water absorbed through soil. Okay? So, here, class, again, ang ating products, glucose and oxygen. So, sometimes the glucose is stored in your fruits ng plants, or other than that, it is also used by plant for energy use. Okay? And yung oxygen, ayan, it is released into air. That's why, class, here in photosynthesis, you can see the mutualism or mutual relationship ng mammals or humans in particular and our plant organisms, diba? So humans generate carbon dioxide, which is used by plants, and on the other hand, or subsequently, your oxygen is produced by plants, which we use it in order to power our cellular respiration process. Ito class ang overview ng photosynthetic reactions natin. Again, our main process here is anabolic. So meaning, we need to have an input of energy because we are synthesizing large macromolecules. Here, we have glucose. Okay, class, diba? Remember in our discussion on polysaccharide, our main energy storage in plants is your starch. And this starch is just a homopolymer of glucose. Diba? We have two components pa nga ng starch, amylopectin, extensively branched compared to your amylose. And here, it is derived from the reaction coming from your, again, carbon dioxide and water powered by solar or light energy. Class, remember, here, our energy products are ATP and NADPH. So in every metabolic pathway, we will highlight kasi the energy products because again, this is particularly important in our discussion on regulation. And of course, it always appear in the board exam. So thirdly, sir, saan nga po ulit located ang photosynthesis? Class, both of them occur in your chloroplast. So one is in the thylakoid membrane in particular, and one is in your stroma. And for the phases, again, we have two light-dependent and your light-independent. Sir, same lang siya with Calvin cycle. Yes po. Or remember, we have different terminologies that we use kasi in your Calvin cycle. So later on, we will introduce other terms or terminologies for this cycle. So class, here is our overall reaction. Check. Ayan, so please remember our stoichiometry here. So we need 6 moles of carbon dioxide and water each plus an input of light to yield your glucose sugar, or in general, sugar molecules plus 6 moles of your oxygen to be released into air. Okay? So class, again, aside from our plant organisms kasi, so we have other organisms capable of doing photosynthesis. And we call those organisms So familiar ba? Here is our photoautotrophs. Okay? So these are organisms that make their own food using light and carry out photosynthesis, of course, in specialized structures. So of course, hindi exclusive po on other organisms na sa chloroplast nag-occur ang photosynthesis. So here we have four examples. First, of course, given in class, your plants, particularly in their chloroplasts. Second, so class, can you guess, so what organism is this? So this is actually your protist. So in particular, unicellular protist. Thirdly, a type of bacteria. So this is the responsible bacteria or organism for the great oxidation event. Okay, so that event is a mass extinction event when this cyanobacteria became capable of using oxygen. So of course, kaya siya tinawag na great oxygenation event. So later on, we will discuss that particular event in our Vitkino segment. And lastly, ayan, we also have your multicellular algae. So of course, it's very particularly important na they can make their own food again for their own survival. Okay, so here, ang ating main organelle where your photosynthesis occurs again is your chloroplast. Similar with your mitochondria, your chloroplast is a complex organelle. It has different components. That's why you need to be familiar with its components. Okay, so here is the structure of chloroplast. So particularly class, here is a visualization of our typical plant cell. O see, we have different types of plant cell. First one, of course, ang main covering or protection ng ating plants is your cuticle and epidermis. And for absorption ng other nutrients such as your carbon dioxide, of course, it is in your stomata. So under your epidermis, we have your mesophyll cells. And of course, this is important for the reactions of photosynthesis. Later on, we will discuss it, class. Okay, so secondly, ayan, we have the parts responsible for the transport of your nutrients. Si xylem for your liquid nutrients. Si phloem is your solid or food nutrients, diba? So again, aside from your mesophyll, later we will see that also bundle sheet participates in unique reactions in your photosynthesis. Okay, so class, here is the main structure ng ating chloroplast. Ayan. So class, every cell has their own chloroplast. Okay, so here we have your membrane, your intermembrane space, similar with mitochondria. We have your stroma, the thylakoid, and of course, classic granum organa. Similar siya with the cristae or the folding in your mitochondria in order to increase the surface area that is a site of your photosynthetic reactions. Okay? Ayan class, so here's the table summarizing the structure and functions of each chloroplast component, okay? So class, for the first two, their function is similar with our mitochondrial membranes. The outer membrane, ayan, it serves as a protective barrier in order to regulate what comes in or comes out of your chloroplast. So in particular class, the outer membrane, it's permeable to small molecule, okay? So inner membrane, of course, it regulates transport. So sir, meaning po ba, it has numerous transport proteins or channel proteins? Yes po. Again, with your mitochondria, diba? The inner membrane is selectively permeable to your different nutrients and molecules. So similar lang po yan sa inner membrane ng chloroplast. Alright, so thirdly, stroma. Check the structure of your stroma. So here is your stroma, the space inside your inner membrane. So this is the site of Calvin cycle, which is your light-independent reactions also. Okay, so fourth, ayan, si thylakoid is your site of light-dependent reaction. So class, let's see. When we say kasi grana, that's the stocks of your thylakoid. So this increase your surface area for efficiency ng light-dependent reactions and of course, compartmentalization. Okay, so here, the single unit of your grana is what we call your thylakoid. And inside your thylakoid, we have your gel-like solution like your mitochondrial matrix. So this is your lumen or thylakoid lumen. And of course, class, ayan, similar with your mitochondrial matrix, it holds protons for ATP synthesis. So, diba, remember the flow of protons in the electron transport chain from intermembrane space to your thylakoid lumen. Okay, so I hope that's clear. And here before I forgot, si chloroplast pala, in its component, it has a light harvesting pigment. So, sir, ano po ang relevance nun sa discussion natin? Okay, class, remember ha, one of the reactants ng photosynthesis is light energy. And of course, our light harvesting pigments are the entry points of those photon or what we call light energy. So on the next slide, we have here examples of those pigments. So for instance, we have two chlorophyll A and B. So these are examples of your specialized pigments ng chloroplast or chlorophyll. Alright, so we also have your carotenoids and all of them plus are excellent light harvesters. Or recall our discussion on biomolecules, particularly in your nucleic acids, nitrogenous bases, and your aromatic amino acid. So what are the commonalities of these two molecules? Again, class, they have conjugated double bonds. And similar with our harvesting pigments or light harvesting pigments, this capability to absorb light is coming from your conjugated double bonds. So, sir, nasan po yan yung conjugation? Here, it is highlighted in purple or pink yata to. Okay? So here we have three examples. Ayan. First one is lutein or we also call it your xanthophyll. Second, we have your beta-carotene. And lastly, ayan, we have your chlorophyll A and B. So class, here, this structure is for chlorophyll A. O sir, ano po ang difference ng chlorophyll A with chlorophyll B? So class, instead of a methyl group, of course, in your chlorophyll B, we have an aldehyde group. Okay? So your lutein, your beta-carotene, and your two special chlorophyll pigments absorb light energy, which are very particularly important for photosynthesis. But last, remember, in particular, ang main pigment po natin for capturing light energy is chlorophyll. Okay? So this is this captures light for energy conversion. O sir, anong ganap ng dalawang light harvesting pigments? So aside from capturing light, they also protect the cell against photo-oxidative damage. Okay? So class, please remember again, your lutein and beta-carotene are our main pigments for protection against photo-oxidative damage or stress. Alright, so class, we are done with the introduction or overview of photosynthesis. So now, let's talk about the phases that occur in your photosynthesis. Again, we have two different phases here, similar with your glycolytic and PPP. First, discuss muna natin si light-dependent reaction. Class, check the process. From your light energy, we will convert this energy into chemical energy in the form of course, ang main energy currency ng cell, ATP plus its reducing equivalent. Okay? Your NADPH. Sir, ano pong function or main function ng light-dependent reaction? Of course, again, it powers kasi your carbon fixation. Or later on, you will realize ATP and NADPH are actually used in our Calvin cycle again to power carbon fixation. Class, here, remember, in our light-dependent reaction, we do have actually two different types or two different reactions. Also, where it is dependent, again, dependent on our cellular needs. So here we have two, cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay? So class, remember our two different types of phosphorylation that occur in your cellular respiration. O, diba? SLP or substrate level, direct transfer ng ATP, ng phosphate group, sorry, to your ADP. For our OP or oxidative phosphorylation, ayan, electron transfer po ang nagpapower ng ating phosphorylation of your ADP to form ATP. So sir, here, since we have a prefix photo, meaning light po ang nagpapower, yes, very good conclusion class. Again, here we use the light energy from the sun mainly in order to produce ATP. So of course, via electron transfer pa rin yun. And later on, you will see class, merong similarities ang ATC with our cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Or remember, again, ang location po ng light-dependent thylakoid membranes. And here, finally, we have three key products, ATP, NADPH, and oxygen. Alright, so now let's proceed with light-independent or what we call your Calvin-Benson cycle. O class C, the products of your light-dependent reactions will be used to power light-independent. So here we use ATP and NADPH in particular for carbon fixation in carbon dioxide to form your sugar molecule glucose. Function, ayan. So class, very obvious again. We synthesize kasi glucose or generally sugar from carbon dioxide in our second phase. And here we have three individual reactions: carbon fixation, reduction, and regeneration. And class, again, remember, we have your location stroma. So here, ang palatandaan ko dyan is, for our light-dependent reactions, light meaning LP, last strip, light is in your thylakoid, and then dog show. Class, light independent is also your dark reaction. So here, dark is for stroma. So left strip, dog show. Okay, so I will reiterate that mnemonics in our discussion on our practice test. Alright, moving forward again, key products, either glucose or triose phosphates. Also, ano nga pong example ng triose? Class, your glyceraldehyde is our reference triose molecule, which we will see it's the product or main product ng ating Calvin cycle. Alright, so now let's discuss the particular information or the discussion of your light-dependent reaction. So again, class, we have two different types here. Ayan, we have your cyclic and we have your non-cyclic light-dependent reactions. Also, ano po ang difference? Class, they are only different aside from the mechanism ha. Again, their main difference is their products. So check, the cyclic, ang kanyang product lang, ATP only. Alright, so of course, yung electrons, your excess electrons coming from the reactions in your light-dependent cyclic photophosphorylation are recycled. Alright, so again, that's why we call it your cyclic photophosphorylation. And on the other hand, si non-cyclic, all three products are produced here, ATP, NADPH, and your oxygen byproduct. Let's check the diagram comparing your cyclic and non-cyclic. Now, class, please check our legends here. So we have here your different complexes, mobile electron carriers, and light harvesting pigments. Also, please identify what are your mobile electron carriers and your pigments. Let's check. Class, ferredoxine, si plastoquinone. So si ferredoxine is abbreviated as FD. Plastoquinone is PQ. These are your mobile electron carriers similar with plastocyanine. So actually, class, si FD nga is tightly linked to your NADP plus reductase. Alright, so here we have your complex cytochrome B6F. So di ba recall our complex 3 electron transport chain, cytochrome BC1. So similar lang sila almost ng mechanism. For our main light harvesting pigments, sorry class, so here we have your chlorophyll. Can either be chlorophyll A or chlorophyll B. So again, those two molecules kasi class are localized either in your photosystem 1 or photosystem 2. Class, let's check the diagram. Here in our cyclic, again, we only produce ATP. And here, class, please remember, we only use photosystem 1. Later on, we will discuss in detail the reactions or the specific electron transfer occurring in cyclic photophosphorylation. So moving forward, sorry, class, si non-cyclic, we also call it your Z-scheme. So here, class, both photosystem 2 and photosystem 1 are used in order to generate, first one, ATP. Second, your oxygen through water splitting or photolysis of water, and thirdly, iron. So of course, last pong na-produce sa Z-scheme or non-cyclic photophosphorylation, CNADPH. Class, I hope it's clear ha. So again, for cyclic, ATP lang ang product. For non-cyclic or Z-scheme, ayan, we have three different energy products. And of course, you can see here, much more complex po ang electron transfer natin because we have different photosystems. And remember, from your undergrad biochem, these photosystems, each of them are capable of absorbing light energy through their specific light harvesting pigment, chlorophyll. Okay? So now, let's discuss in detail these two different photophosphorylation mechanism. Starting with our introduction muna, again, on the components of your light-dependent reactions, regardless if it's cyclic or non-cyclic. Class, again, for photosystems, we have two main photosystems, PS1 or PS2. Class, in our electron transport chain occurring in your light-dependent reaction, una pong naka-form or naka-complex si photosystem 2 in our electron transport chain. That means, in our conventional or typical light-dependent reactions, particularly sa non-cyclic or Z-scheme, it's the one that starts the light absorption. Alright? So, of course, your photosystem 1 is behind your mobile electron carrier. So class, again, very important po ang mobile electron carrier in the form of PQ, plastoquinone, plastocyanine, PC, and ferredoxine. Class, you can see the similarities, diba? Si PQ and PC are just like your ubiquinone and your cytochrome C sa ating ETC sa respiration chain natin or respiratory chain. Of course, again, ang main function nila is to link the photosystems and your complexes here in our electron transfer. Alright, for the complexes, we have two different complexes here, si cytochrome B6F and your NADP plus reductase. And finally, in order to produce ATP, we have ATP synthase. O sir, similar lang ba yan sa ATP synthase sa ating cellular respiratory chain? Yes po. And of course, ayan, its main function again is to produce ATP via your photophosphorylation through your photon gradient or your electrochemical potential. Class, again, very similar po ang mechanism ng light-dependent reactions, particularly ng non-cyclic photophosphorylation with our electron transport chain. Alright. So class, at this point, let's discuss in detail your cyclic photophosphorylation. So here is our diagram for your cyclic photophosphorylation. So you have seen this earlier na, okay? So the picture on the left side naman is our general electron transfer mechanism. So let's discuss this. So class, this mechanism occurs both in your cyclic and non-cyclic as our primary electron transfer mechanism. So here kasi we have your excitation. So from your light absorption, of course, in particular, diba? Recall in your inorganic chem, we have your photon. And once your photon is absorbed by your chlorophyll molecule, particularly your special chlorophyll A molecule, ayan, your electrons here will be excited or it will be undergoing excitation. Alright? So it has two different pathways here or fates. First one, we have your heat dissipation or it can fluoresce through fluorescence. Alright? So that's the pathway or mechanism in order to revert or go back to your ground state. So class, again, here is our general mechanism of excitation. Alright? For our photosystem or cyclic photophosphorylation, it uses photosystem 1. Ang electron flow natin, class, remember? O check the diagram. Here is our photosystem 1 in particular. Si special chlorophyll A po, our primary electron acceptor will be excited through light absorption and your electron transfer will be initiated here. So from your PS1, ayan, you can see that your electron will be transferred to your redox chain. So si redox chain are series of electron carriers starting with your, ayan, ferridoxine. And then of course, here we have your PQ, your cytochrome B6F, your plastocyanine, and photosystem 1. Alright, class, again, I hope that it's clear. Here we have your flow of electrons. So for the product and function, we have your ATP only through your chemiosmosis and proton pumping. And then your electron again will be recycled. So class C, ang ating redox chain, of course, it's in decreasing energy. That's why, after some time, your electron, in order to go back to your ground state can dissipate heat or can release heat or either fluoresce. Diba? So as you can see here, class, as well, aside from the decreasing energy via your electron transfer, here po, ang affinity ng electron ay increasing in order for your redox chain reactions to be spontaneous. Again, your electron affinity is increasing here. So sir, that means C plastocyanine po has high affinity to the electrons compared to your ferridoxine? Yes. Okay? So class, again, please remember, wala pong NADPH and oxygen produced in your cyclic photophosphorylation. And hence, because the oxygen is produced through photolysis or water splitting, of course, very obvious, wala rin po tayong water splitting that occurs here. Class, again, I hope that's clear. Important po here ang photosystem used, photosystem 1 only, electron flow. So here, PS1 until it reaches back again your PS1. Kaya nga, di ba we called it cyclic? We recycle your electron until it reaches photosystem 1 and product again, ATP with your chemiosmosis and proton pumping. Class, clear with cyclic photophosphorylation? Again, very straightforward si cyclic compared to non-cyclic. O sir, bakit po? Because we only use one photosystem. O let's see your non-cyclic. O diba? Slightly overwhelming, but again, we summarize it in order for you to easily digest it. The information, sorry. So class, here are the information that you need to know. So class, overview pa lang to. We will also discuss the specific electron flow in your non-cyclic or Z-scheme photophosphorylation. O class, check. Photosystems use both of them. Diba kanina I emphasized, PS2 is our main electron acceptor and then of course, your PS1 will follow. Ang electron flow in general from PS2 to your NADP plus reductase. O sir, ba't hindi po kasali sa ATP synthase? Again class, ang nagpapower sa activity or function ng ATP synthase is the proton gradient generated from your proton pumping here sa specific complex natin, cytochrome B6F. Okay? So I hope that's clear again from your cytochrome B6F. Class, remember earlier I said that the proton pumping occurs in your non-cyclic is from the stroma to your thylakoid space, sorry. So of course class, this is very important in order to produce a proton gradient that will be used by your ATP synthase. Okay? So here again, from photosystem 2 to your mobile electron carrier PQ to your cytochrome B6F complex, class, the cytochrome B6F can pump 2 protons. And then afterwards, ayan, so we will transfer your electron to your plastocyanine and it will be transferred finally to PS1. Class, wait lang. Again, you can see we have a decreasing energy transfer here from our PS2 to PC. O sir, how come nabiglang tumaas ulit yung energy? Ano po ang source ng energy from your electron transfer here sa PS1 to your NADP plus reductase? Class, again, ang photosystems po are site of light absorption. So sir, capable din po si PS1 ng light absorption. Yes, that's why of course you can see again, may increase tayo ng energy. Okay, so again, we have an increase here of energy. Again, kasi na-replenish ng light absorption occurring on PS1, your energy here. So here, it will start with PS1 to your ferridoxine tightly linked to your NADP plus reductase. O sir, si ferridoxine po ba talaga ay mobile? Slightly, yes. But again, it is a mobile electron carrier. But here kasi class, it is tightly linked kay NADP plus reductase. Diba? So this is the overview of our non-cyclic photophosphorylation. And remember the products, ATP, NADPH, and oxygen. Yan, we have a water splitting or photolysis occurring in your non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Class, here are the specific reactions occurring in our NCP or non-cyclic photophosphorylation, also known as Z-scheme. First one, again, ang ating special chlorophyll A molecule is your P680. Okay, so that's very specific for PS2 excitation. Sir, need to memorize. So actually not that important naman. Okay, it's just important that you are aware we have two different special chlorophyll A molecules in your PS2 and PS1. All right, so now we have your primary acceptor capturing from your PS2. O sir, 2 electrons po at a time ang tinatransfer. Yes po, correct class. And here again, ang water splitting sa PS2 nag-occur. That's why in our PS1 or in our cyclic photophosphorylation that only uses PS1, walang water splitting or photolysis. Alright, so our second reaction, electron transport chain or your redox chain. Again, from your PQ to your complex cytochrome B6F that will pump 2 protons to your plastocyanine. Class, again, it's very important that you remember cytochrome B6F is the only complex in your non-cyclic photophosphorylation that contributes in our proton gradient generation. Okay, so that's why very vital po ang ating cytochrome B6F in order to power ATP synthesis. Kaya pala sir, part din siya ng cyclic photophosphorylation. Yes, because again, recall, ang main product ng cyclic is ATP as well. And thirdly, ayan, we arrive here at our last electron transfer process starting with PS1. So kay PS1, ang ating specific special chlorophyll A molecule ay si P700. So from plus to cyanine, we will transfer your electron, and in PS1, again, another excitation process will occur. And here, you can see that the electron transfer will follow your ferredoxine NADP plus to your reduction ng NADPH in order to produce your final product. O, diba? So class, always remember again, your P680 and P700, they are very important in absorbing light energy because they are initiator molecule for electron transfer. Okay? So I hope that's clear. Now we have a mechanical analogy in our non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Okay? So first, ayan, si photosystem 2 here is shown like your worker lifting a photon to push or excite an electron up your tower. O, diba? So that class, imagine, nandito si chlorophyll molecule, and here we also have your P680 molecule. So here it symbolizes light energy excitation in P680. Okay? So as you can see here, the electron falls down as light, and here we have your mil. That makes your ATP. O sir, yan po ba si ATP synthase? Yes po. So class, this mil represents chemiosmosis and ATP production. And lastly, the electron ditches photosystem 1 where another photon re-excitation occurs. So class, again, P700 po ang responsible chlorophyll A molecule in your photosystem 1. And of course, here, the re-energized electron is then used to power or to reduce NADP plus to NADPH. Okay, so here, shown by the worker here ang yung NADP plus reductase reaction. So here again, light boosts electrons in PS2 and PS1 with a full powering ATP synthesis and ending in NADP plus reduction to form NADPH. O class, clear with our discussion on non-cyclic photophosphorylation. O sir, pwedeng pa-summarize, medyo madami na yung info. Yes class, I do know, medyo super saturated na kayo because again, nasa day 3 supposedly or our half na ng crash course discussion. So class, going back, here is the summary of our light-dependent reactions. Ayan, so here, photosystem again sa cyclic PS1, sa non-cyclic both. For products, cyclic, ATP lang po. Always remember, sa non-cyclic, we have two energy products, ATP and NADPH are also your reducing equivalents. And finally, the oxygen to be released into the air. And electron path, again class, we call it this cyclic photophosphorylation because your electron cycles back or being recycled back to PS1. And sa non-cyclic, as you have observed earlier, linear po ang electron flow from your PS2 all the way to your NADP plus reductase. And for your three main or core processes, water splitting, o class, synonymous lang yan sa photolysis, ha? Second, NADPH production, and third, oxygen release. Lahat po yan, it does not or they do not occur in cyclic, but rather only in non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Alright, so for our regulation discussion, here it is class. Here we have three different factors. Let's examine. For light intensity, of course, the intensity of light being absorbed controls excitation. So sir, are there instances na mayroong excess light absorbed? Yes, and we have seen it in our general mechanism ng light excitation or light energy absorption through excitation. Si excess light intensity or light energy is dissipated as heat. So yan yung main mechanism niya. But of course, in several or in other organisms, they fluoresce in order to liberate your excess heat. Okay? Si ATP synthase, ayan, it is activated obviously by your proton gradient because again, your ATP synthase is powered by your proton gradient. Ay sir, similar mechanism lang po ba sa ATP synthase with our cellular respiratory chain? Yes po. Okay? So similar yung domains and similar ang functions. And lastly, si NADP plus reductase, of course, it switches to cyclic when we have enough concentration ng NADPH. O, diba? Yan kasi ang tendency or natural tendency ng all enzyme. Kapag meron ng enough product or your enough substrate needed by the cell, of course, stop na po. Okay? Mag-stop na po sila. And here, specifically through feedback inhibition. And lastly, class, again, cyclic is favored kapag meron tayong NADPH na high ang concentration. Again, kasi there is no need to synthesize na your NADPH or kapag need din ng ATP. So again, si cyclic very active kapag high ang NADPH. Meron tayong low ATP, thus mataas ang demand ng ATP or both. Alright? Now class, let's proceed with light-independent reactions. So far, carry ba ang light-dependent reactions? Yes sir, piece of cake. O, diba? So class, again, in one sitting, you cannot absorb all the information. That's why I always reiterate, ang akin talagang tip in biochem is to use the flashcard or the active recall method. So kahit na digital flashcard or physical flashcard will do. Alright, so going back, we have your light-independent reactions. Okay class, if you are, having a fatigue from our discussion, you can pause the video, take a short mini break, and then resume afterwards. Okay? So please, balikan nyo po ang ating discussion here in this video. But for now, ayan, I will proceed with our light-independent reactions. Class, diba, recall, as I have said earlier, your light-independent reactions have different synonyms. We can also call it dark reactions, Calvin-Benson cycle, or C3 photosynthesis. So later on, we will rationalize why is it called C3 photosynthesis. Okay, so class, check your manuals. We have your Calvin cycle there. And class, later we will also tackle the stoichiometry of your Calvin cycle. Sir, is it important? Yes. Remember class, ang product ng Calvin cycle is glucose. But we cannot produce glucose in just one round of your Calvin cycle. That's why we need to compute or account how many rounds are needed in order to produce your 1 glucose or 1 mole of glucose. Sir, additional question po. Is light-independent reactions really strictly independent? Well, similar with cellular respiration, diba? Your anaerobic reactions are actually partly anaerobic lang because they need oxygen in order to activate your enzymes participating in those processes. Here in our Calvin cycle, similar reasons is also applicable or are also applicable. Of course, light po ay needed to activate your enzymes involved in our Calvin cycle. Class, I hope that's clear, huh? We just call it light independent because in terms of our direct substrates, your enzymes, they do not use light. Rather, they use light for activation ng enzyme for catalysis or for catalytic function. O class, let's proceed with our three individual reactions in your, Calvin cycle. Oh, sir, tatlo lang ulit, no? Yes, we have carbon fixation in our first reaction. Our reduction is the second reaction, and lastly, regeneration. Okay, so let's start with our first reaction. Here we incorporate carbon dioxide to our initiator molecule. Ay, sir, familiar. Para siyang si oxaloacetate, no? Yes. Si ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate is actually the product of the last reaction ng Calvin cycle. And we call it your initiator molecule because it participates in the first reaction in our condensation reaction where we incorporate the carbon coming from your carbon dioxide to your organic ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate to produce, ayan, 3-PGA. O class, please disregard muna the stoichiometry here, ha? So we will discuss it in detail kasi in our one specific slide. So para hindi kayo ma-confuse. Again, ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate is converted to your 3-PGA or 3-phosphoglyceric acid by your ribulose bisphosphate carboxylase. O class, your enzyme, its abbreviation, Rubisco. Ay sir, parang familiar. Yes. Here, ang purpose niya is to incorporate carbon dioxide again to your organic molecules. O class, alam niyo ba? Ayan, si Rubisco is actually the most abundant enzyme. O class, please remember ha, may mga students kasi na nako-confuse, they write it as Rebisco. So, Rubisco po. So, baka dala lang ng gutom, that's why, ayan, medyo nagkakaroon tayo ng slight errors sa spelling ng Rubisco. O, going back, again, Rubisco, function niya, most abundant enzyme, which catalyzes carbon fixation in this specific pathway, Calvin cycle, and recall, we have your Mg2 plus as cofactor. O sir, parang si Mg2 plus, cofactor din ng kinase enzymes. Yes po. So, si Mg2 plus is your cofactor or metal cofactor in particular, stabilizing the double bonds with the oxygen in your Rubisco molecule. So we have two catalytic functions kasi ng Rubisco, si carboxylase for this first reaction and si oxygenase soon malalaman nyo. Okay? So for our inhibitor, oxygen po. So again class, si Rubisco can react with oxygen via photorespiration. Sorry class. Oh, so sir, I think yan yung oxygenase reaction ng Rubisco, no? Yes po. O class, again, na-spoil na kayo. Si oxygenase function ni Rubisco ang nagkakatalyze ng photorespiration where we use oxygen. That's why inhibitor siya ng dapat main function niya in its carboxylase reaction with carbon dioxide. And lastly, before we proceed with our discussion ng second and third reaction, let's check the activators ni Rubisco. O class, again, light po ang main factor that will activate your Rubisco. O sir, bakit po? Wala siyang direct effect dapat, di ba? Recall, in our light-dependent reaction, we produce ATP and NADPH. And of course, if we have enough light intensity, we will produce enough amounts or concentration ng ATP and NADPH that will power your carbon fixation and your second and third reaction. Okay? So second, your cofactor availability, Mg2+. So class, obvious na yan. Now, we discussed it in our enzyme discussion. And thirdly, carbon dioxide. Sir, yan yung initial substrate. That's why activator siya. Yes po. Okay? Kapag meron tayong enough concentration ng carbon dioxide, it signals Rubisco that it needs to work, di ba? Of course, kapag nagpa-pile up na yung kanyang work or task like your carbon dioxide, it needs to process it. And lastly, experimentally determine that your Rubisco prefer or it's activated in high pH or basic environment. Okay, so class, let's proceed with our last two reactions. See, our first reaction is actually a stepwise reaction to reduce 3-PGA to our final sugar molecule here in our Calvin cycle. Class, remember, G3P is a triose phosphate sugar. Here, class, we have your two enzymes catalyzing the reduction. So, phosphoglycerate kinase uses ATP actually to convert first your 3-PGA to 1,3-BPG. Familiar yung enzyme, di ba? Of course, we also seen this in our glycolytic pathway. And second, G3PDH, o di ba? Familiar ulit. Again, we already saw this one. So, 1,3-BPG to G3P, of course, ayan, we need to use your reduction or your reducing equivalent NADPH. Sir, question, do we need to memorize the structure here? Class, similar with your glycolytic pathway and your any other pathways, no need to memorize the structure, okay? So please just recall the name of the substrates, your enzymes, and the regulated enzyme specifically. Again, class, ang purpose ito is to use ATP and NADPH, ayan, we have a production of sugar precursors in the form of G3P. And lastly, ayan. So of course, your regeneration step is needed to continue our cyclic, diba? The cycle of your carbon fixation. Class here, ayan ang enzyme natin, ribulose 5-phosphate kinase. Also, gagamit na naman siya ng ATP. Yes, that's why energetically expensive din po si Calvin cycle. And of course, class, ang unique here is that its mechanism is similar to the reverse of the non-oxidative phase ng PPP. Okay, so class, remember our three reactions here in your Calvin cycle. Again, carbon fixation, reduction, and regeneration. Class, now we are on our discussion, the stoichiometry. Because again, hindi po straightforward na produce si glucose in just one round. Kasi recall, we only fed one carbon dioxide per round ng Calvin cycle. Class, we tabulated the information here in your diagram for easy tracking ng mga reagents or your molecules and energy products. Check. Ayan. Class, remember, per cycle, we only use one carbon dioxide. And of course, ang products natin, 1/3 lang po ng G3P. Kaya pala sir, sa Calvin cycle, we need to fix 3 carbon dioxide to produce 1 mole of G3P. Yes po, kasi sa biological system, wala namang 1/3 G3P. So approximation lang to class. And lastly, for each cycle, we use 3 ATP coming from your second and third reaction and NADPH coming from your second reaction. Okay? So per glucose, ayan, we only need to multiply each molecule here by 6. Okay? So here, 1 times 6, ayan, we need to fix 6 carbon dioxide. Ooh, so sir, we need 6 rounds of the Calvin cycle to produce 1 glucose. Yes po. Okay? So again, for your glucose molecule to be produced, you need 6 carbon dioxide. You will produce 2 G3P that will be condensed into glucose. Remember, 3 carbon sugar C, G3P, while 6 carbon sugar C, glucose. Moving forward, 18 ATP po in total and 12 ATP ang total na energy needed to synthesize glucose. Di ba, grabe class ang energy needed here in your Calvin cycle. We emphasize here, 6 rounds meaning 6 carbon dioxide ang ife-fed, 18 ATP ang need, and 12 NADPH ang reducing equivalents needed in your Calvin cycle or in your glucose production through photosynthesis. So now we proceed with our last sample problem here in our discussion on photosynthesis. Class, let's read the problem. Which product of the light-dependent reactions in photosynthesis is released and not used in the Calvin cycle? So class, we are highlighting here non-cyclic photophosphorylation ng light-dependent reactions. Diba? Because again, siya kasi ang tightly linked sa ating Calvin cycle providing your energy product. Siyempre, hindi ko is-look ang answer. Class, let's discuss. Again, ang products ng ating non-cyclic or Z-scheme are your ATP, NADPH, and oxygen. Diba? O sir, pwede nang i-eliminate si glucose. Yes, class, again, hindi po natin na-produce si glucose sa ating light-dependent reactions. Alright, so now we are left with these three products. And recall, si ATP and NADPH, we actually use it in our Calvin cycle to power your second and third reaction. O sir, in-eliminate mo na. Yes po, that is not the correct answer. O class C, ayan, as we discussed earlier, we have your ATP and NADPH as our precursor or energy products to be used in our Calvin cycle or light-independent reactions. And clearly, si glucose, product po yan ng Calvin cycle. Class, I hope that you are already familiar with our answer or you already know the answer. Very easy, diba? Answer, oxygen. Remember, byproduct po ito that is released into the air. Alright, it does not take part in the subsequent steps of photosynthesis. Class, now we arrive in our last topic for this video. Remember, again, we need to highlight your photorespiration process, the oxygenase reaction ni Robisco. So here, class, photorespiration occurs when we have low carbon dioxide concentration or high oxygen concentration. So if we are going to get the ratio of it, of course, ang magiging product nito ay low carbon dioxide to oxygen concentration. Again, class, ang oxygenase reaction ni Robisco ay wasteful because we produce your carbon dioxide instead of using it. We also use energy. So again, wala tayong produce kasi na sugar in your oxygenase reaction. O see, here is the diagram. Again, ang original reaction ni Robisco is your Calvin cycle. But when there is a high concentration of oxygen, ayan, it will be funneled to your photorespiration, producing mainly your carbon dioxide instead of using it. Class, here is the specific reaction that occurs under or during your photorespiration. So again, aside from your carbon dioxide, your photorespiration process also produce your glycoxylate. So of course, it consumes energy again, ATP, and it releases or produces CO2. Class, this is the specific reaction. So again, you can see here, instead of carbon dioxide, it reacts with oxygen. So no need to memorize the full reactions in converting your ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate to your glycoxylate. Basta class, you know that our products here involves carbon dioxide and of course, your glycoxylate molecule. And here, of course, important to know that again, we utilize ATP kasi. Okay, and here, wala po tayong na-produce na glucose molecule. Because again, if we condense this glycoxylate, we cannot produce glucose. So class, more importantly, your photorespiration again happens when there is a high concentration of oxygen. So that occurs when we are under hot and dry conditions. And aside from that, in these conditions kasi, your stomata, the opening of your plants remain closed. And thus, your carbon dioxide cannot enter your plant cells. So I hope that's clear, class. Now, of course, very brainy po ang ating plant organisms. They actually counter or they can actually counter your photorespiration by evolving, diba? So here they use your carbon dioxide concentrating pathways. So here, we have your C4 photosynthesis and granulation acid metabolism or CAM. So here, class, ang comparison ng ating original C3 pathway, C4, and CAM pathway. Alright, so class, we call your Calvin cycle your citric photosynthesis because our first product is your 3-carbon sugar. Okay? And later on, you will see but that for C4 and CAM, ang kanilang initiating product is your 4-carbon sugar, of course, in the form of oxaloacetate for both. Again, di ba recall, for our C3 pathway, ang ating first product ng ating reaction ay 3-phosphoglycerate. Okay? So I hope that's clear. Again, your 3-PGA is actually a 3-carbon sugar. So oxaloacetate, sir, 4-carbon, no? Yes. So let's discuss in particular first your C4 photosynthesis. Class, I think it's also in your manual. So now, let's briefly discuss the important information that you need to know. Class, here again, ang carbon fixation product natin is your oxaloacetate. And here, your PEP carboxylase is actually the first enzyme catalyzing your reaction. And our release location ng carbon dioxide bundle sheath, because class, it's important to note here, ang separation mechanism ay spatial separation. So ano pong meaning nun? Meaning, different cells po nag-occur ang carbon dioxide concentrating reactions and your Calvin cycle. Class, sa C4 cycle, this cycle, as you can see in the diagram, is the carbon dioxide concentrating reaction. Let's discuss this in detail. First, papasok po si carbon dioxide in your mesophyll cell. And then, your PEP carboxylase will incorporate it in your PEP or phosphoenol pyruvate in order to produce your OAA. Also, sir, hindi si ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate ang initiator molecule. No po, class. Sa Calvin cycle po, si ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate. See, after converting it to OAA, ayan. So this is just the succeeding reactions. Once we converted your OAA to malate, your malate will deliver the carbon dioxide to your bundle sheath. So class, your carbon dioxide will be concentrated to your bundle sheath and then we will produce your pyruvate as a byproduct and this will be converted back to PEP, okay, to continue our C4 cycle. Class, again, ang ating CO2 fixation, it occurs in your mesophyll and your bundle sheath cell is the site of Calvin cycle and the release of your carbon dioxide. Remember, again, carbon fixation, mesophyll, and Calvin cycle, bundle sheath. That's why your C4 photosynthesis is really advantageous because of the close association of bundle sheath and mesophyll cell, allowing more efficient transfer ng ating intermediates participating in this pathway. Okay? So again, our typical environments where your plants evolve to have C4 photosynthesis include hot and sunny environments with moderate source of water. For instance, we have your maize or your cone. I'm sorry class, corn or sugar cane. Alright? So ayan class ang ating prominent examples of your plant organisms that are capable of C4 photosynthesis. Alright, so class, gising muna, baka yung iba sa inyo nabobore because again, this particular topic is very easy, di ba? Ang dali naman sir, hindi pa ba yan? Of course class. Okay, so going back again, ayan, medyo malapit na tayo class, 12 slides. left. So going back, we have your CAM pathway. Okay? Si CAM pathway, similar lang po yung C4 cycle. So it starts with your oxaloacetate production. O sir, ano po ang difference? Class here, instead of your spatial separation, temporal or through time separation po ang mechanism. And clearly here, si carbon fixation, di ba, sa inyong C4 pathway, nasa mesophyll. Here, it's occurring at night. While si Calvin cycle in your C4 pathway, nasa bundle shift. Here, it occurs during the day. Okay? So class, let's discuss your CAM pathway or your crassulacean acid metabolism. So similar, ang kaniyang carbon fixation mechanism, again, at night po nag-occur. Here, ang ating carbon dioxide release location, i-store muna siya sa vacuoles of your mesophyll cells, and then as malic acid siya. O class, don't be confused ha, malic acid is just a protonated form of malate. And here, your malic acid is released during the day to concentrate your carbon to get ready with your Calvin cycle. O sir, ano po ang advantage ng temporal separation? Of course, better adaptation siya to your typical environments where CAM pathway is suitable. Okay? So of course, aside from that, we also have your better water conservation mechanism because kino-close ng ating plant cells ang stomata during your arid, okay? During your extremely arid environments or during the day. Okay? So again, ayan, very crucial po kasi ang water conservation in your CAM pathway. Okay, for examples, we have your cacti, succulents, and pineapples. Again, class, here are your two different strategies ng plants in order to survive or to order to overcome your photorespiration. I hope that's clear. Sir, tapos na ba tayo? Please, sir, sana tapos na. Yes po. So now we arrive with our photosynthesis summary. Class, remember ha, the location and the products as well as the regulation are very important here in photosynthesis. Sir, nag-appear talaga siya? Yes. And more often than not, situational or integrated ang questions in your biochem subtest. Let's discuss. Sa light-dependent again, location, thylakoid. Diba? LT, left trip for your dark reactions or light-independent dog show, meaning dark reactions occur in your stroma. Sa photorespiration, sorry, we have different sites, either sa stroma, peroxisome, or mitochondria where oxygen concentrations are high. Alright? Reactants class, remember, but here I will focus on your relevant products. So for light-dependent reaction, again, si cyclic, ATP lang. Si non-cyclic, all three ang products niya. Okay? Si light-independent, ayan, we have your G3P to glucose conversion. O sir, glucose talaga lagi ang final product? No, it can also be G3P lang depending on the needs of our cells. And lastly, sa photorespiration, again class, carbon dioxide is produced and here we do not produce sugar. And purpose again, very straightforward class ha. So we already discussed the purpose of each processes occurring in photosynthesis, including your photorespiration reaction. And regulation, of course, for flight dependent, from the name itself, light intensity. For light independent, of course, ang main regulatory or effector molecules niyan, ang energy products. And lastly, for photorespiration, of course, your low carbon dioxide or high O2 concentrations, particularly in hot or dry conditions. Okay, class, to conclude our discussions in photosynthesis, let's discuss your did you know portion. O diba, as I have said earlier, ayan, did you know that photosynthesis caused Earth's first mass extinction in the event called Great Oxygenation Event? And ang culprit is your cyanobacteria when they started releasing oxygen. Because during that time, of course, dominant po ang anaerobes sa Earth. And of course, when your cyanobacteria began releasing oxygen from your photosynthesis, it killed off countless anaerobes. Here we call it your Great Oxygenation Event. And of course, this reshaped the planet once your life-giving oxygen pala is actually a deadly poison. Diba? So lastly, ayan, so some bacteria actually photosynthesize without the use of sunlight. So meaning, your photosynthesis doesn't always mean sunlight, oxygen, and green plants with your purple sulfur bacteria. O sir, ano pong ginagamit niya? So class, instead of water, diba? Here you can see they evolved light-powered metabolism that doesn't use water. And instead, they use hydrogen sulfide. And of course, they do not produce oxygen, rather, they produce elemental sulfur as a byproduct. O class, see the structure of your purple sulfur bacteria. Cute, diba? So they are found in deep sea vents, hot springs, and anoxic swamp layers. So important na nag-adapt sila in their environment for their survival. Okay, so now we arrive with our 3 items ng quick quest. Okay, so this is about our discussion on photosynthesis. So let's start. First, the Calvin cycle occurs in the thylakoid membrane. Or remember, left trip dog show, Calvin cycle is dark reaction. So meaning dapat sa stroma siya, sir, diba? Yes. Obviously, answer is false. Again, si Calvin cycle is in your stroma. Second, carbon dioxide is produced as a waste product in photosynthesis. Now, sir, that's a very wrong assumption. Of course, class, again, remember, oxygen po ang ating waste product released into the air. CO2 is our reactant in our light-dependent or our Calvin cycle. Sorry, class. So again, ayan, false statement po siya. And lastly, ATP and NADPH are energy products used in the Calvin cycle. Ay, nako sir, very true yan. Yes, ayan. So class, now we arrive with our final Lars words. Okay, so here are the pathways that we discussed under carbs metabolism. So class, again, the summary is available in your manual. Just check the discussion after amino acid metabolism. Or remember here, we have your 5 different pathways. But class, remember ha, si glycolysis is also a part of carbs metabolism. For PPP, again, ang ating process, production of pentoses and reductants through conversion of G6P. Again, class, amphibolic ang ating PPP because it serves in your catabolic and anabolic reaction. And for our location, again, sa cytosol po with our key regulated enzyme, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. Or remember the product, diba? Diba depending on cellular conditions, we switch on and off the phases of your PPP. Okay, for our next two, this is under glycogen metabolism. O sir, diba reverse reactions yan? Yes. For glycogenolysis, again, remember, lysis meaning breakdown ng glycogen to form glucose, while sa glycogenesis, of course, your production ng glycogen through glucose. Genesis ng glycogen or birth of glycogen. Or for method type, of course, catabolic si glycogenolysis and then anabolic si glycogenesis because we are building up large macromolecules, particularly your glycogen polysaccharides. Both of them, of course, occur in the cytosol and their key enzymes, phosphorylase and synthase for glycogenolysis and glycogenesis, respectively. Diba obvious na ang products class? we discussed those in our processes. And fourth, we have GNG. Recall, rare po ang GNG to occur because energetically expensive siya, coming from your non-carbohydrate precursor to produce glucose. Also, ano nga po ang main function ng GNG? Again, for our liver, it's to regulate our blood glucose concentration, and in our muscles, to provide energy in the form of glucose. That's why anabolic po, si gluconeogenesis. O class, remember ha, unique si GNG because it both occurs in your cytosol and mitochondria. Remember, the first reaction, the pyruvate carboxylase, occur in the mitochondria, but the rest of the bypass reactions occur in your cytosol. O, our key enzyme here is your F16 bisphosphatase. So that's the reverse reaction that is catalyzed by your PFK1 in your glycolytic intermediate. And lastly, very fresh photosynthesis again, anabolic reactions siya in general. We have two, light dependent and independent, or we also call it Calvin cycle. For the location, of course, left trip, light dependent, thylakoid, dog show, Calvin cycle, dark reactions, stroma. And for key enzymes, class, remember again na, si ATP synthase and NADP plus reductase, sir, sila po ay regulated, yes, because they produce ATP and NADPH respectively. For our Calvin cycle, ayan, we have your Rubisco as our key regulated enzymes. And remember our products, class, please, ayan. So now, ayan. So class, again, very confusing ang ating carbs metabolism because they are actually similar to each other in terms of their reactions. So in particular, di ba, si glycolysis, si GNG are related, si glycogenolysis and glycogenesis are also related. And these four are related. And of course, different sets lang ng enzymes ang ginagamit natin in order to avoid a futile reaction. Okay, class. Now, for the last stretch ng ating discussion, here is our review checklist similar with our respiration discussion. O, di ba, in our summary, we identified and classified our carbs metabolism, including their cellular locations, the specific and key regulated enzymes, and their energy products. For instance, si glucose sa GNG and your glycogenolysis, si glycogen sa glycogenesis, si NADPH sa reaction ng PPP and your light-dependent reaction, and si ribose 5-phosphate sa reaction or sa non-oxidative phase ng PPP. And of course, we have your mnemonics. So class, don't worry, we will summarize the slides for our mnemonics. And of course, class, this is the last slide for our crash course number 7. O class, please answer PT7, 10 items for 15 minutes. So class, for our next discussion, crash course 8 will be about lipid metabolism and amino acid metabolism. Okay, class, so please answer again PT7, practice closed manual answering. So I will see you on the next video. Bye, and please take momentary breaks. Bye, class.